In this short video, we will provide an overview of what are commonly referred to as Brady obligations, or Brady disclosures, and sometimes even just the Brady Rule. We will also briefly discuss how Brady disclosures may intersect with confidentiality obligations. Brady obligations come from a United States Supreme Court case called Brady v. Maryland, in which the court held that prosecutors are constitutionally obligated to disclose evidence favorable to an accused that is material either to guilt or to punishment, irrespective of the good faith or bad faith of the prosecution. This means that the Supreme Court has interpreted the United States Constitution to require the prosecution to disclose certain information in its possession to the accused when that information could be beneficial to their defense. The Brady Rule requires prosecutors to automatically disclose information in their possession to the accused when that information could be helpful in defending against the criminal charges because it's relevant to the determination of guilt, to punishment, or to the credibility of witnesses. Prosecutors have an obligation to disclose this information, even if they might not know of the information firsthand or have the information in their own files, and even if the information isn't being withheld in a malicious way. Under the Brady Rule, prosecutors' duty to disclose includes information possessed by others who are acting on behalf of the prosecution in connection with the criminal case. A number of federal and state courts have addressed whether information possessed by advocates is subject to the rule, and have generally concluded that prosecution-based advocates are part of the prosecution team for purposes of the Brady Rule and its required disclosures. This means that Brady information possessed by prosecution-based advocates will likely have to be disclosed to the accused. Courts have also determined that when it comes to information in the possession of law enforcement, prosecutors' Brady disclosure obligations apply to information in the possession of members of law enforcement who are assisting with the investigation of the case. Courts have made it clear that information known to law enforcement is legally considered to be information in the possession of the prosecution and subject to Brady disclosure obligations. This means that advocates who are directly employed by law enforcement will generally also fall within the Brady Rule, and may be required in some instances to share information that they learn from victims. Brady disclosure obligations are something that have to be explained clearly to crime victims from the very first contact so that they understand how, when, and with whom their information may have to be shared. And it is a topic of conversation that should be ongoing. Survivors often benefit from reminders about the confidentiality of their information, as well as any exceptions to that confidentiality. Crime victims often feel more comfortable sharing personal information with individuals who have an obligation to keep their information confidential. Professional confidentiality obligations, including those that apply to communications between victims and advocates, arise from legal and professional ethical duties not to disclose information learned in confidence. Brady information is an exception to the general rule of confidentiality that otherwise applies to advocates and others who may work for law enforcement or prosecutors' offices. Generally, exceptions to confidentiality are rare. Brady disclosures are one example of this type of exception, and mandatory reporting of child abuse is another example of a common exception that may apply in some circumstances. It is important for victims to understand what exceptions, if any, apply to the confidentiality of communications they might have with different service providers. Every service provider must be able to explain exceptions to confidentiality, including Brady, clearly and in a way that allows victims to choose which services to access and what information they feel comfortable sharing and with whom. Establishing close partnerships to assist in providing victims with referrals to service providers with different confidentiality obligations is crucial, as it helps ensure that victims are able to make these choices in an informed and empowering way. NCBLI has created a number of online resources to assist victims, victim advocates, and victims' rights attorneys with understanding victims' rights and that touch on notions of privacy, including the Brady disclosure obligations that can be a key exception to privacy protections for some system-based advocates. Additional publications, videos, and other helpful resources can be found on NCBLI's website.